So first case is 2020-111, 2434 through 2462 Greenmount, and 2429 through 2431 Brentwood Avenue, Caroline Hecker. It's to consolidate those addresses and then construct a mixed-use building. It's going to have 89 affordable housing units, street-level office and retail space with ground-level parking, with a ground-level 45-space parking garage. This case has several variances. It's a weird property because it's actually, some of the addresses are in one district and some of the addresses are in another, and there is a support letter for that. 2020-119, 1000 Drude Hill Avenue, aka 501 Dolphin Street, has been postponed. 2020-128, 539 East 38th Street, George Abraham, to construct a first floor rear addition with a rear deck. There is an opposition letter in that case. 2020-138, 601 South Kenwood Ave, Matt Nopeful. This is on the consent docket. It's to construct a second floor rear addition with a rooftop deck, and it has a support letter. 2020-139, 724 North Carrollton Avenue, William Broadus. It's to use the property as 4 dwelling units. Based on our records, it looks like a conversion, so we'll have to hear him explain why it's not. And there's also an opposition letter in that case. 2020-140, 1100 West Lafayette Avenue, same applicant, William Broadus. This is to use as 5 dwelling units. Again, question about whether this one is a conversion. There's some history of multifamily use, but also a more recent permit for a single family dwelling. But there is a support letter in that case. 2020-142, 705 East Patapsco Avenue, Marshall Jackson, to use the first floor as a 40-child daycare center. So a daycare center is actually permitted in this district. The issue here is a parking variance, and there is a petition in support. 2020-143, 3902 Edner Road, Dwayne Taylor. This case is on the consent docket. It's to construct a rooftop deck onto a rear detached garage. Basically, they're building a deck just overhanging their garage that's already there. So that's on consent. 2020-151, 1184 to 1186 Nanticoke Street, Keisha Foster, to use the first floor as a restaurant with outdoor dining. So this is a neighborhood commercial establishment, so the restaurant is a conditional use. However, outdoor dining, I believe, is not permitted here, so we'll have to get more information on that. And then 2020-153, 3233 to 3241 O'Donnell Street, Nate Prettle. This is to use as 13 dwelling units. There is a support letter. This one has a kind of funky history in terms of they've been before the board a couple times to sort of change the use and then change it back. And then also there's a parking issue regarding a 2017 note that they were supposed to go to the Planning Commission. So we'll have to hear that one as well. And that is the docket, the general meeting docket. So since it is 1:16, I am going to jump to the official docket. Sorry. All right. So for anyone listening, we are officially starting. It's Tuesday, September 22nd. There's a Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals hearing. I'm going to go over some of the WebEx technical stuff first before I hand it off to the chair. So confirming we're recording. Yes. All right. So first off, if you are not testifying or speaking, please mute yourself. That way we can cut down on a lot of the background noise. What we'll do is when your case is called, I will elevate you to a panelist and then unmute you. So the board will be able to see and hear you if you have a camera, of course. If you would like to testify on any of the cases, either in support or opposition, you can raise your virtual hand. That is a feature you'll see at the bottom of your WebEx screen if you are logged on to a computer or a phone. And if you use that virtual hand feature, then we'll know that you want to testify on whatever case we're on. Also, if your case is called and you want to raise your hand so that I can find you in the list faster, that's really helpful. If you are a call-in user, you obviously will not be able to raise your virtual hand. And so what we do at the end of each case is I go through and just unmute you for 2-3 seconds. If you are a call-in user who wants to testify, go ahead. If not, stay silent. I do like a count to 5 and then move on to the next one. And I believe that's it. Oh, so if you have any issues or questions, you can use the chat feature. I do ask you use the chat feature and not the Q&A one, because the chat one's just a little easier. You can message the whole panelist or me privately, but I'm the one who will respond. If you have any issues and you need to call the office, there is someone there to take your call. The phone number for our office is 410-396-4301. And that's it for me.
Why is everyone muted?
I muted everyone to cut background noise. You can unmute yourselves if you'd like.
Alrighty. Again, just go with some of the basic ground rules. The board will vote on each case to make a decision at the end of the docket. Obviously, you can see us and hear us, and you can feel free to stay and hear that deliberation. Otherwise, you can call the BMZA office tomorrow morning after 9 a.m., the same number that Ms. Nadeau just mentioned. That number is 410-396-4301, 410-396-4301. In any event, you should receive your resolution in the mail within 30 days. Please do not do any work until you do receive that resolution. And of course, don't do any work within Baltimore City without pulling the proper permits. As Ms. Nadeau mentioned, there is one postponed case today, 2020-119, 1000 Drude Hill Avenue. So if you're calling about that, there will be no need. And now I will address those matters for which the board has concluded we have sufficient information to grant the request. And there are two consent cases. Case number 2020-138, 601 South Kenwood Avenue, Matt Nopeful, to construct the second floor rear addition with rooftop deck. Mr. Nopeful, can we bring him up?
Yes. Let's see.
I'll ask for any staff or planning reports with regard to this property.
Hello.
Afternoon, sir.
So we have two letters in support for this case. The first is from the Greater Greenmount Community Association, which states, as a community association representing Barclay, the neighborhood in which this project is being proposed, we have met with the developer on September 19th, 2020. Oh, wait. I'm reading the wrong one. Sorry. Give me a second. My mistake. Okay. Correction. So for 2020-138, this is from Doug Hoffman, the chair of the Economic Development Committee, the Canton Community Association. He states that a review of these plans indicates they're quite straightforward and do not raise any concerns with our committee. We know the property has been posted as required. The immediate neighbor has been notified. We have received no objection or concerns from neighbors. The contractor has agreed to plant a tree in front of the house if possible and minimize the adverse impact of the project on adjacent neighbors during construction.
And Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Very well. Mr. Nopeful, is there anything you'd like to add to your application at this time?
No, there isn't.
Very well. The board, having heard your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On the next consent case, case number 2020-143, 3002 Edna Road, Dwayne Taylor. This is a request to construct a rooftop deck onto a rear detached garage. While we're bringing up Mr. Taylor, I'll ask for any staff or planning reports for this property.
There are no staff reports.
All right.
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, is there anything you'd like to add to your application at this time? It's muted.
Is he muted? Let's see.
Looks like it.
Sorry, unmuted.
No, sir.
Very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, I don't want to add anything else to the application. That's
Very
fine.
well. Very well.
Thank you.
For having heard
All right.
your appeal, we believe we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay.
Now, turning our attention to the continuing regular docket on the matter of 2020-111.
James, can I pause for 1 second? I'm going to take a 2-minute break to get Avery back in.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I just need a minute to pull it up, and I can only multitask so much.
Sure.
I think,
Oh, we can hear you.
can you hear me?
We can. I did send you the call-in info as well, if you'd like to do that.
Perfect. Send it to me because I have a feeling I might get kicked off again.
Okay. Let me know if you didn't receive
Sorry.
it. And actually, while we're paused, I'm going to go through the call-in users real quick to see if either of them have anything about 138 or 143.
Okay,
There's only 2 of them. So, all right. So if you're a call-in user, you're going to hear 2 beeps, which means you're unmuted. If you're in opposition or in support of 601 Kenwood Avenue or 3902 Edna Road, let me know. Okay. Sorry. That's everything.
I will now call the next matter on the regular docket, case number 2020-111, 2434 through 2462 Greenmount Avenue and 2429 through 2431 Brentwood Avenue. Appellant is Carolyn Hecker, and the request is to consolidate 2434 through 2462 Greenmount Avenue and 2429 through 2431 Brentwood Avenue and construct a mixed-use building with 89 affordable housing units, street-level office retail space, ground level 45 space parking garage. Now I ask for any staff and or planning reports for this property while we get the party.
Okay, so 2 support letters in this case. The first is from the Greater Greenmount Community Association. It states, as a community association representing Barclay, the neighborhood in which this project is being proposed, we met with the developer on September 19th and have been briefed on the concept and plans for the project. We look forward to continued communication and engagement with the developer through future meetings as the project proceeds. The next support letter is from Councilman Robert Stokes, which states, I look forward to seeing the project come to fruition as it will provide several benefits to our community, including it will eliminate blight and create clean, safe, affordable housing. The partnership with Citywide Youth Development will activate ground level retail, and the partnership with Citywide Youth Development will provide job training and employment opportunities to community residents.
Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that these properties being assembled are either vacant properties or contain abandoned buildings, or in one case, actually have an active commercial use, which is going to be removed. The properties on Greenmount Avenue are separated from the properties on Barclay Street by a 10-foot wide city alley, which must be acquired by the applicant in order for the consolidation that's necessary for this application to occur. The department is fully supportive of the proposed use and the proposed building. The issue, of course, is that there is no consolidation on record at the moment, and that was as of June 26th of 2020 when this recommendation was written. The applicant may require a variance of height limits, and the department is supportive of that for this particular property. In addition, the required yard setback requirement in C1 is 20 feet. However, the properties, once consolidated, will have what would be their rear lot line on Barclay Street, where there is no front yard setback of housing, and therefore the department is supportive of a 0 lot line building coming up to Barclay Street through from Greenmount Avenue. The department recommends approval of the application be subject to these conditions: consolidation of all of the lots, and approval by the planning department of the design of the proposed structure to be built on the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Ms. Hecker?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin, Greenberg. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. A number of our team members are also should also be in the virtual meeting here. Aziz Husseini and Brett Griffith from Fortis Low Community Partners, who are the applicant. Tom Liebel of Mosley Architects, and Eliza Hertzmark from Colbert Matz Rosenfeld, our civil engineer, as well as my partner Justin Williams. I think should all be on the video meeting. With your permission, though, I'll proffer the testimony, and then we're all certainly available to answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, that's fine. And maybe before we get started, if we could address the issue of the consolidation of the lots initially.
Oh, yes, certainly. We've been in the process of acquiring the various properties, which will include the alley that's going to be closed between Brentwood Avenue and Greenmount Avenue. We're working with the Department of Transportation on that process right now. And once the alley closing reaches a certain point in that process, we will be able to obtain a right of entry from the city, which will allow us to consolidate the lots across the alley. But in order to consolidate the lots, we have to address the alley first. And as I said, it's underway, but we haven't gotten that far yet.
Very well. You can go ahead and proceed then, as you wish.
Wonderful. Livu, can you allow me to share my screen?
I can. Okay, permission given.
Wonderful, thank you. We had sent over a number of exhibits here we go. Can you all see my screen here?
Yes,
Yep.
ma'am.
Okay, great. We had sent over a number of exhibits. I'm not sure if they've all made it into your file, but I think it's proven to be a little bit easier for me to go through them virtually than to rely on paper copies making it over. I have a handful of aerial photos and some street view photos showing the properties in question. Can you see my cursor as I move it around?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So this is Greenmount Avenue. Brentwood is back here. The properties come across Brentwood, across the alley between Greenmount and Brentwood. It's probably easier to see on another page here. It's a total of 9 lots. Here's the backside. This is the Brentwood Avenue side. There's a vacant parking lot, and then the properties along Greenmount Avenue. As Mr. French said, there are buildings that are not in great shape right now. A lot of them are boarded up, vacant buildings. There's no structure on the Brentwood Avenue side. But Fortis Low Community Partners has been going through a process to acquire this group of 9 lots plus the alley, which we're proposing to consolidate and construct a mixed-use building with 89 affordable units above some retail and office space with parking included as well. We are requesting a number of variances, which I'll go into in a little bit of detail, but they're largely driven by the fact that the property has split zoning. Here, let me scroll through a few more pictures. Here's the Brentwood Avenue side is a large parking lot or vacant lot right now. And then, I don't know, it's so tiny. As you can see, the property has split zoning. The large property fronting on Greenmount Avenue is zoned C1, and then the row house units are zoned R8, and then across the alley in the back, the Brentwood Avenue sign is also zoned R8. This is located in the Barclay neighborhood, which has experienced a little bit of revival over the last couple of years. There have been a number of projects coming forward in this area. We've been working very closely with the local community association and the local councilman. You have the letters that Livu read into the record from Councilman Stokes and from the Greater Greenmount Association. What we're proposing to do, as I said, is to construct it's very tiny, a mixed-use building, and if I can get the site plan a little larger here. Let's see, show the whole thing. So the building, as I said, fronts along Greenmount Avenue here. There'll be a lobby coming in off of this side. There'll be a first floor retail office space along Greenmount Avenue. The building is then above, residential units above, that's cantilevered over parking that's accessed off the alley off of that runs between the Brentwood and Greenmount Avenue side. And then there's additional parking in the rear accessed off of the Brentwood Avenue side. And I have as well some architectural images. The building has been through the UDAP process with the planning department. It's been through site plan review committee and has been approved. So the project is ready to move forward pending the variances that we're requesting today. So to go into the variances in a little bit more detail, we're requesting a minimum lot area variance for density to add an additional 13 units over the 76 units that would be permitted by right. The property, it has, as I said, it has split zoning. So, the portion of the property that's located in the C1 district would allow 35 units by right. And in the R8 district, we would be allowed to have 28 units by right, which gets us up to a total of 76, that gets us up to a total of 63, but we're also entitled to a density bonus based on the affordable housing component of 20% of the units that would be allowable by right, which gets us up to the 76. But as I said, the property will have a total of 89 units, so we are requesting a density variance for that additional density. We're requesting a maximum lot area variance for the C1 portion of the building. Under the zoning code, there's a maximum lot area permitted of 10,000 square feet in the C1 district. The existing C1 property is larger than that. It's 10,569 square feet. It's an existing condition, but out of an abundance of caution, we've included that in our variance requests to have a larger than 10,000 square foot area zoned C1. The building height is proposed to be 49 feet, which is less than would be allowed in the C1 portion, which would be 60 feet, but greater than the 45 feet that would be allowed in the R8 zone portion. So we are requesting a height variance on that front. We're requesting a rear yard setback variance on the Brentwood side to allow a 0-foot setback on the Brentwood side, which is, effectively, if you're coming down Brentwood, starts to look like the front of the Brentwood, the other buildings on Brentwood. So that's consistent with other buildings on that block. And again, is supported by the planning department and has been through the UDAP process. We're requesting interior side yard setback variances, which are due to the fact that the lot lines are not always at 90-degree angles on the sides of the properties. The buildings don't line up quite perfectly. We have, in some areas, up to a 3-foot setback from the adjacent properties just because of the irregular shape of the lot lines. And then finally, we're requesting a minor variance on the width of the parking aisle in the parking garage to permit a 20.5-foot wide drive aisle in lieu of the required 22 feet, which again is due to the narrowness of the site in terms of being able to lay out a parking garage that meets the city standards. But this will be a garage that's for residential use. It's the same people coming in and out every day, and it's it's easier for people to use at a retail lot where different people are coming and going every day. Having a slightly smaller drive aisle in a residential facility is, it'll function perfectly fine. And again, it's been reviewed and approved by the site plan review committee. As you mentioned, we have the support of the local community association and the local councilman. We're working with the Department of Transportation on a lot consolidation issue over the alley. And I can go through the legal standards with regard to the variance requests if you like, but we submitted a memo that proffers all of that for your review. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And our team obviously is on the line as well and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for the board at this time?
We might have some people who want to testify, but we can do board questions.
I don't have any questions.
Nor do I.
All right. Well,
Okay. So
we'll move to
first,
those folks.
we have a Bossum who saw me. I'm going to unmute you, sir, and you can. I know you sent a chat message, so.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm an owner of 2450. I'm partner. I have another partner with me. And we were not aware of this project or be notified that the projects include the building that we own. So I don't know what the situation here and what need to be done.
Well, let me get into that because I was under the impression that we had site control over all of the buildings. You say yours is 2450?
Yes.
Did I get that right? I may need to defer to one of the representatives from the developer on the phone, either Mr. Husseini or Mr. Griffith, who may be able to answer that. Are they, Leo, can you see?
Yep, I will. Hold on. I made them both panelists, and I'm unmuting them now. Okay, they're all unmuted.
Got you. Aziz Husseini here on behalf of FLCP. When the meeting was scheduled, we had a contract that had been executed by the seller. I know him, well enough. Since then, there have been some changes to the contract, and I anticipated having those changes ratified by now. It's been a few weeks, so that is. I'm actually surprised that we've gotten here without it. So at the time of the submission and the subsequent dates that things were pushed back, we had a ratified contract, and there have been some changes, but I did not anticipate things changing drastically that would change us getting site control of the parcel, given that nothing had changed from a proposal standpoint affecting the site control, if that makes any sense.
I'm not sure that it does. This gentleman is suggesting that he's an owner of 2450.
Yes, he is.
And how did you intend, or what is the process by which you would get site control of 2450?
Sure. At the time that we submitted the application, we had an executed contract with the owner that was waiting on our execution to make it a fully ratified contract. Since then, there have been some back and forth. Let me put it that way, to keep it simple. But the overall, it was my anticipation, I guess falsely so, that we would still have a fully ratified contract between when things changed and now.
All right, so you all entered into an agreement to purchase 2450, correct?
At the time that yes.
All right, so this gentleman, I'm not sure who this is again, who says is the owner of 2450. Are you not aware of this contract? He said you were.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say was that at the time that we submitted for this hearing date, we had a contract that was ratified by him and his ownership group. Okay. Yeah. So since then, between then and now, there have been some minor changes made, but like I said, the changes were minor, and I did not anticipate not having a newly updated, fully ratified contract at this point. What is true is that that we have had communications about the project with the community as a whole, and I have not had a direct, poignant conversation with him as we were purchasing the property. And once we purchased the property, it's my understanding that we can do what we would like.
All right. Again, is this the gentleman speaking? Is it Mr. Husseini?
Correct.
Are you aware that the property was being sold to these folks for this project, or are you saying you're not aware of that?
I'm aware of what Mr. Aziz mentioned. I'm aware of it, that we were discussing and we started a purchase selling process between us. However, what I was not aware of, the big development that is taking place right now. And I was surprised when I saw that in the sign that was put adjacent to our building that I saw just recently, that the numbers included our building. But here, what I like to suggest, since I suggest that us and Aziz and probably the developer, Mrs. Hacker, who represents the developer, we can take this offline, discuss it to see how we can address that issue instead of taking too much time from the entire presentation that you guys are doing right now. This issue needs to be addressed between us separately from what's going on here. I wasn't aware that Mr. Aziz is going to be available at this meeting or to the extent of this meeting.
Okay, that's fine. That's absolutely fine with me. I agree that we shouldn't take everybody's time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Caroline Hecker. I would like to request a continuance of this hearing so that we can address the ownership issue and work out the site control before we proceed.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ms. Heck.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So in the meantime, or now, we're going to move on to the next matter on the docket. Case number 2020-128, 539 East 38th Street. George Abraham, this is a request to construct a first floor rear addition with rear deck. And I'll ask for any staff and or planning reports for this property.
So staff received a letter in opposition, and that letter states, "To whom this may concern, my property exists directly across the alley. This property asking to be zoned for a rear first floor addition and deck above has already had the work completed. During the construction, they poured excess dirt from their project into my backyard and cut down my trees along my fence. They did not speak to me for my permission to do so, and I did not give them permission to violate my property. I am against this zoning since they were cavalier with the process from the beginning and violated my property boundaries with their debris and the cutting of my trees. Also, this addition does not allow for proper access for the sanitation trucks to easily maneuver through the alley. Please analyze the area before any requests are met in this case."
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right, give me a second to bring up the applicant. Okay, he is unmuted and made a panelist.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Abraham.
How you doing?
Doing okay. So, couple things. Could you hear the letter or the commentary from the letter?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One, is the project already built?
Yes, sir.
How did that happen?
When I purchased it, it was like that. I spoke with the city. They told me I had to pull a permit in order to move forward if I wanted to keep it. And so that's what I did. I pulled the permit. I got an architect to come out and draw the plans up and to make sure it was suitable for the city. And I did a whole renovation from top to bottom. And I had a problem with the tenant next door because I was, making noise, but I had the right permits to proceed with my work. So that was my issue.
All right. Tell us about the ability of, ingress and egress or access from sanitation to the alley in light of the construction.
Say it again.
There's also commentary that it now impedes sanitation trucks from getting back there to do what they have to do.
No, sir. The sanitation truck goes through there all the time.
There's no constraints. They can fit and do what they need to do.
Not at all, sir.
I guess to the extent there's any intrusion on the other landowner's property, that's frankly not a matter for us. Is all the construction completed at this point?
Yeah, yes, sir. 80%.
I have a question for you. When you purchased this, you said the rear addition and the rear deck were already built?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you purchase it?
In October
Of last year? Yeah.
last year.
And so what is it that what is the construction that you are doing now? Are you finishing up or?
Yeah, I'm finished. But, as though I had to get I had this hearing to move forward, and COVID stopped me.
Well, you were breaking up there. Can you just answer the question again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that answer.
I said, COVID had stopped me, and I had to pull a permit. I spoke with someone at the city and told me that I had to pull the permit.
So this is something that you were finishing. This isn't something that was already completed.
It's something I'm finishing. Rehab.
Well, yeah, our confusion is you said it was already built, and then you're saying you're still working on it.
No, it was already built. It was already built when I purchased it.
What was already built? The rooftop deck?
The addition.
Addition.
I just had to pull a permit.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
No questions.
None for me.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Bill.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Abraham? Point.
No.
Okay. If anybody who is signed in, called in, would like to testify, go ahead and raise their virtual hand. In the meantime, I'm going to go through the call-in users to make sure that they don't want to testify. Again, if you're a call-in user, you're going to hear a beep, which means you're unmuted. You can stay silent if you have nothing to add. But if you do, go ahead and speak. All right, that's both the call-in users.
Okay. Move on to the next matter on the docket. Case number 2020-139, 724 North Carrollton Avenue, William Broadus, to use as 4 dwelling units. And I'll ask for any staff and/or planning reports for this property.
So there is a letter in opposition for this case from the Harlem Park Neighborhood Council. It states the Harlem Park Neighborhood Council, Inc. is not in support of the use of 724 North Carrollton Avenue as 4 dwelling units. This is a complete block of buildings with no empty spaces other than the house taken down at the corner of Harlem and Carrollton. To put 4 units in this one building would be a hardship on the community. They already have parallel parking on that side of the street. Each one of the units will have at least 1 car and parking is already tight. No one has contacted the HPNC for any kind of conversation.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is in the Harlem Park 2 urban renewal plan area, which does allow the proposed use. Also noted that there was a record that there was a certificate of occupancy for use of the premises as 4 dwelling units issued on September 4th, 1979, which admittedly is a long time ago now. However, there is therefore the precedent that this building has been used for 4 dwelling units. There is no record of a non-residential use of the property. Therefore, the proposed separate office in front of the first floor level of the premises is unapprovable unless it is made accessory to multifamily dwelling use of the building. The amount of variance that would be required for approval of 4 dwelling units would be approximately 5%.
Martin,
Are we able to fix the background noise? I can't hear Mr. French.
It's jumbled.
Okay. I muted everybody, and then Martin, you can unmute yourself.
I'll unmute. All right. I'm not sure how much you missed of that. There is a record that this property
Please
was
start. Yeah, start
authorized
again. Thanks.
by a certificate of occupancy for 4 dwelling units on September 4th of 1979. So there is a precedent for use of this property as 4 dwelling units. The amount of variance that would be required now would be approximately 5% of the lot area requirement. The floor plans also include a proposed office. There is no record of non-residential use of this property, and therefore the proposed separate office in the front of the first floor level of the premises is unapprovable unless it is made accessory to multifamily dwelling use of the building. This property is in the Harlem Park 2 urban renewal area, where the urban renewal plan does permit the proposed use. The department is therefore not offering any objection to approval of the application to use the property as a multifamily dwelling containing 4 dwelling units, and recommends disapproval of principal use of a portion of the property as an office, as there is no record of non-residential use of this property that would qualify it for neighborhood commercial establishment use. The department would have no objection to approval of accessory office use of the first floor front room of the premises. Thank you.
So I have a note from the staff report and the file. So the first is that I know it says to use as 4 dwelling units is what they applied for, but Martin's point about the office is correct because the floor plan does actually show an office. The second thing is we pulled the permit history from housing, and there was a permit for a single family dwelling issued January 26, 2009, which stated to reduce from 4 dwelling units to a single family dwelling with kitchen facilities removed from second and third floors. Then it says premises was inspected and permit finalized December 9th, 2008. And then the multifamily dwelling license was canceled May 2009. So Martin's correct that they did have a history of multifamily use as 4 dwelling units, but it looks like in 2009 they converted it all back to single family.
And that being the case, of course, if in fact single family is the last recorded use of the property, the board would not have the discretion to approve this application, and the applicant would need to seek an ordinance to authorize conversion of the property, since this is in the R8 zoning district.
Thank you, Mr. French. A question for Ms. Nadeau. The permit history indicating I guess a final permit was issued for single-family use. That's my understanding is that's all that needs to be done in order to formally convert it to single-family, correct?
Yeah. That would mean that it was legally converted back to single family. So yeah, so what Martin said, converting it back now would be a conversion that would require an ordinance.
All right. Brodus, are you present? Can you hear us? He's muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. So we've been looking at the history with regard to this property, and it appears that the most recent status of it is a single-family home as of December of 2008 or January of 2009. I was unable to approve this request for 4 dwelling units.
Now, was the use issued because the building is still consisting of 4 meters and 4 dwelling units? So, was that issued or applied for?
So it says the permit was issued on January 26, 2009, and that permit was finalized on January 9th.
Okay, for the use or for a building permit?
For the use. It's a use.
Can I have the use number, please?
So it's use 2008-0500.
05003?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to request a postponement so I can research.
Okay.
Very well. But while we have you, sir, we'll call the next matter, which is case number 2020-140, 1100 West Lafayette Avenue. Again, Mr. Brodus, and this is a request to use as 5 dwelling units. I ask for any staff and planning reports for this property.
So for this one, we have a letter in support It states our understanding of the project. Let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Yes, is that intends to renovate the existing building into. This letter says 4 dwelling units. But says he's been very proactive in reaching out to us in the community to present his plans for the building. The proposed development would help address community concerns regarding blight and vacancy. The property is prominently located on the northeast corner of historic Lafayette Square Park and has sat vacant for far too long. Mr. Folks has reassured our community that he will address community concerns regarding multi-unit properties related to trash storage and collection. And this letter was from the Lafayette Square Community Development Corporation, which was formerly known as the Sandtown South Neighborhood Alliance. And then for permit history for this one, there was a single-family dwelling use and occupancy permit issued in February 2004. And then in 2013 and 2017, there were work permits that made reference to tenant fit outs, but there wasn't actually a new permit for a multi-family dwelling, which I guess is probably what this is. But there is that single-family dwelling permit from 2004.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted the key point, which is just being raised by your Executive Director. Permit COM 2003-4660, issued February 10th of 2004, designated this property as a single-family dwelling. This is in the R8 zoning district, and residential conversions in the R8 zoning district require an ordinance of the mayor and city council. The department therefore recommends disapproval of the application because the board is not authorized to approve conversion of a single-family dwelling to a multifamily dwelling in the R8 zoning district where the property is located. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Broadus, same issue. Is it something you'd like to add to research and reconsider?
Yes, I've reached out to Baltimore Gas and Electric to provide me the previous tenant bills. I'm a request a postponement on this one too.
Okay.
Very well. 2020-140 is also postponed. We'll move on to the next matter on the docket, case number 2020-142, 705 East Patapsco Avenue, Marshall Jackson. This is a request to use the first floor as a 40-child daycare center. I'll ask for staff and planning reports for this property.
So we have a petition signed by 23 people. States, we, the undersigned, call on the City of Baltimore Zoning Board to allow for a child care center to open for children 6 weeks old to 12 years old at 705 East Patapsco.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is zone OR1, which is an office residential zone in which daycare centers for adults or children are not listed as a permitted or a conditional use, therefore are not allowed. The property was last authorized for use as a tavern, which is a non-conforming use in the OR1 district, but the tavern use is being discontinued and the building is currently vacant. Because the zoning code prevents any approval of a change of non-conforming use, the board is not authorized to approve a proposed different or changed non-conforming use of the property. This property is located in the Brooklyn and Curtis Bay urban renewal area, where the urban renewal plan does not prohibit or further restrict the proposed use. However, that said, the department recommends disapproval of this application because the proposed use is a prohibited use in the OR zoning district where the property is located. The zoning code does not authorize creation of new non-conforming uses, which a daycare center would be at this location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
So I don't see the applicant's name, so I'm going to assume that she's called in. So I'm going to unmute the call-in users. If one of you is the applicant for this case, please say so.
Marshall Jackson.
Okay.
Jackson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Were you able to hear the commentary from Planning Department regarding the zoning issues associated with your request to place the daycare in this location?
Yes, I heard some of it, but I got disconnected when I tried to take it off of mute. I hit the wrong button. So I know that you said that it was rezoned for OR1 district, but then I didn't hear anything after that. I had to get connected back in.
Well, the critical issue is that this particular district does not allow a daycare center to be placed in the location.
So what happened was I was next door at 701 East Patapsco, and I had the building there, and I've had it there for the last 3 years. However, the person that I leased it from had it for the last 5 years prior to that. So we've had it for a total of 8 years. However, there was a serious mold issue in the building, and when they came and did the air quality test, I had to shut the building down and wind up moving out because the landlord was not willing to get the problem fixed expeditiously so that I can continue to run my business. And right next door, the landlord had a commercial building available, which is at 705. So he said that I could move there. But that's the only reason that I moved. Now, and I know that 701 was grandfathered in, I think, as of the 2017 when they changed the laws. But that's the only reason why I'm asking permission to move next door, because I would have continued in 701 for forever running my daycare. But because of the issue and the unwillingness of the landlord to get it fixed, and the problem was over $100,000, I did submit the mold report to your office as well to show you. So that's the only reason that I'm asking, just to move directly next door.
I understand
So I think 701 is like 701/703, and that's why 705 is right next door.
I think the problem is the particular use that was at 705, which doesn't comport with putting your business there now under the provisions of the code. It would seem not to make much sense since it's right next door, and you would think that if the daycare center was allowed to be where it was at 701, that there shouldn't be an issue with regard to 705. But I think the issue goes to the history of the use of 705. Such that it was not previously a daycare center, so we did not create a new commercial use for that particular location. Am I saying that correctly, Mr. French?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
So I think, unfortunately, the circumstance would not, at least the code presently as it exists, would not allow the placement of a, do you know what the business, well, it doesn't really matter. If the business wasn't a daycare, it's some other business. Unfortunately, that wrinkle would not permit you to relocate your business to that location. I don't know what your other options may be, but it's something that the board, it's not a discretionary issue. We don't have the power to grant the request, given the history of the use of 705 and what it is you propose to do with it.
But I think that the use history, I think it was a bar there. So it is zoned as a commercial building, but the bar has since left. And so that's why it left the commercial building open.
I understand it was a commercial building, but it was not a commercial building used as a daycare center. So that if it was a bar and now seeks to be used as a daycare center, that's a change in a non-conforming use. And the code does not allow such a change in use of the building, again, under the present code construction. So, unfortunately, it's apples to oranges, and that makes a difference in this situation. I understand fully what it is you're trying to do and why you would do it, and, obviously why there's a need in that area. But unfortunately, we're constrained by the prior use of the building. And that use making this proposed use a change. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done to save or resurrect 701, but under the present code, it appears that 705 cannot be a daycare center without changes to the zoning code or an ordinance.
Okay, so let me ask you, how do you get, or is there a way to get the zoning code to change? Because in the area, it's nothing. I mean, it's like a row of houses there, but all around, like directly across the street is the district courthouse. Right across 7th Street at the corner of Patapsco where 701 is, it was a 7-Eleven, and now that's getting ready to be used as a business. So how do you get it if it's like in a business area? Is it a way to get the code to change?
That process, they underwent that process in 2017. There was a new code created in 2017, and I don't know what the plans are going forward for any additional reconstruction of the code. There are certain aspects of the code that are being sort of amended kind of as on an ongoing basis, but not the code as a whole. So I'm really not in a position to answer your question as to what the next steps, are in terms of changing the code for this issue. And Ms. Nadeau, is there anything you can suggest as to who you may reach out? You're muted.
Say that one. I didn't hear the last part.
Sorry about that. I was muted. So you'd have to reach out to your city council person. It might bump up against spot zoning issues, but that would be your next avenue.
Okay, yeah, because I believe that I reached out to, so yeah, and they were the one that told me to proceed. So I don't know if it was proceed to see like what your answer was going to be, to see what they had to do, but okay. Okay.
If
Well,
I
I will
may,
reach
I'd like
back.
to add, Ms. Jackson, I would suggest you also try contacting Brent Flickinger in the planning department. He is the South District Planner, which includes this property. You could consult with him because very often, if a zoning change is of concern to one property, there may be other properties where there are similar concerns, and he might have more information to help you with that.
Okay, what is his last name? I got the first name, Brent.
Yeah, Flickinger. And if you like to email him, his first name is Brenton, Brenton, .flickinger@baltimorecity.gov. That would be his email address.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Calling the next matter on the docket, and I'll just wait for Ms. Hecker to weigh back in, figure out when she's ready, but we'll just keep going through the docket. Calling case number 2020-151, 1184 through 1186 Nanticoke Street. Keisha Foster, this is a request to use first floor as a restaurant with outdoor dining. I ask for any staff and or planning reports.
Nothing from staff.
Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that this property could qualify as a neighborhood commercial establishment, and therefore the proposed restaurant would be a use conditionally permitted at this location. However, the zoning code at the present time does not contain outdoor dining as a permitted use, and it does not specifically authorize in the residential districts the creation of outdoor dining as an accessory use to a restaurant. Therefore, the department is proposing approval of the portion of the application relating to the restaurant on the property and disapproval of the portion of the application relating to outdoor dining because the zoning code limits neighborhood commercial establishment uses to building interiors at the present time. And for the benefit of the applicant, I would add that this is another issue that is going to be considered for amendment in the amendments bill that the planning department is preparing to offer hopefully next year concerning the zoning code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Ms. Foster, are you present?
You should be.
If it's Bacon Soul Bakery.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I am
All right.
present.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Okay. You tell us about Yeah, well, one, were you present? Did you hear the commentary from planning department as to your proposed use as a restaurant and outdoor dining, particularly the outdoor dining restriction?
Yes, that was more so when things were restricted, and we thought that the application process would move faster. And restaurants were not permitted to have indoor seating, so we wanted to be able to increase our capacity.
Okay, understood. So a pandemic-related issue you were seeking to address. Well, since the approval certainly would be for pandemic or non-pandemic conditions, you understand that under the present code, right now you're only able to have indoor dining, but not outdoor dining?
Yes, that is understood. And we can still continue to use the carryout as well.
I think right now in pandemic, she can request a permit for outdoor dining. Anyone can.
That is correct. It's a temporary permit. I don't know how long they're for. When I last talked to zoning administration, they were till like sometime early next year.
Yeah, they're through January.
Yeah.
And my bet is that they'll likely be renewed again, because depending on what the situation is next year.
Right.
So Ms. Foster, you are kind of amending your request then just to use the first floor as a restaurant then, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as a carryout as well, because I see it says Fielder's Tavern and there's a little carryout building in the back of it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
What are the hours of your establishment, man?
Currently we're thinking of 12 to 8 or maybe even an evening time.
I'm sorry, I need you to speak up, ma'am.
I said we're thinking of a 12 to 8 or evening. We haven't completely decided.
I want to note for the board, this is in an R8 where a carryout is not permitted.
Okay, that's an important notation. So what is your plan? I'm looking at the right thing here. What is the seating capacity of your restaurant?
It's 45.
Right. And I get, is this new to you that the carryout is not permitted?
Yes, because it's been here and the owner used it for years previously as a carryout.
Okay, but that may have been improper, or it may not have been, but under the current code, in this particular district, carryout is not permitted. Are you prepared to proceed with a dine-in, putting aside the temporary permits for outdoor dining, a dine-in only restaurant with no carryout?
Yes.
Right.
It's a little heartbreaking, but yes. So I have a question. Does that mean that it will never be able to?
I would never say never. I would have said never to a pandemic, but didn't control that. So I think for the time being, under the present code, which is all we can operate within, and certainly the code will be revised at some point. But again, as it stands, for the purpose of our consideration, we can only consider the dine-in, restaurant with no carryout.
Oh, is that for both? Because the carryout has the address, the 1186, and the 1184 is the actual restaurant. So that code would pertain to both.
Absolutely, the code pertains to the district and the location where you're situated, and so the district does not allow carryout in that district. Again, can't speak to the legality or validity of what was taking place before, but the law is right now, no carryout is permitted in that district.
But that doesn't mean that you can't order something to go from the restaurant, right? That's different than a carryout. Am I correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, I was a little confused. Okay.
Ma'am, have you operated a restaurant before or a food service establishment?
No.
So if it helps, so I'm going to read the two definitions so we could see the difference. So a carryout food shop is an establishment where prepared food is served in disposable containers or wrappers from a serving counter, primarily for off-premises consumption. Whereas a restaurant is an establishment at which food and drink are provided to the public, primarily for on-premises consumption by seated patrons. So that's the difference between the two. I do have a quick question. So there was a prior use as a tavern with carryout. Do you know when that use ended? Or is it another way to phrase it, when did you acquire the property?
We acquired June the 1st.
June 1st. Okay.
And the previous owner, spoke with him, but there was no mention of when he actually stopped.
So you don't know. So when you purchased it, it wasn't an up and running carryout, correct?
It was, but it wasn't from the owner. The owner had sold the property.
Okay. And you don't know when he stopped operating it as a carryout?
No, I do not.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to see if there was a non-conforming use issue.
All right. Are there any further questions from the board at this time?
Well, the only other
No questions for me.
Thank you.
None from me.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Foster.
Yes, the only other question I had, I do know that it was previously used as people were able to purchase lottery here. Is that where I speak with you about that? And liquor?
Sorry, so you want to use it as a convenience store and a liquor store? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm stating that's how it was previously used. So I'm asking, is that still permitted or no?
The retail goods with alcoholic beverage sales is not permitted in an R8 under the current code.
Okay.
And you understand
I guess I'm just because I don't have an interest in the lottery, but the building does hold a liquor license. So I guess I'm just trying to understand. Is the liquor license just for the actual, when people come in and sit down, they can order drinks?
With the liquor license, I believe, with the liquor license, make that more clear as to what type of license.
Yeah, it's two. So there's two separate things. There's the liquor license. This came up when we had the liquor appeals by Mr. Previs last year. So there's a difference between the having of the liquor license and then authorizing the property for the use of selling alcohol.
Okay. Okay.
And the code doesn't allow those retail goods establishments that sell alcohol in the R8 zoning district.
Okay.
So again, to be clear, Ms. Foster, we are only considering your request for use as a restaurant.
Well, I'm just asking questions because I do not have plans to operate the way that the previous owner did, but I'm just questioning because I don't want to do anything and be out of compliance.
Sure, we appreciate that. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add to your application at this time?
No.
Very well. All right. Well, if there are no more questions from the board, we'll take this up, at the end. Sorry, you might be hearing some background noise from my 7-year-old, which is his break time. Just bear with me. This door is thin; it separates us. So apologies. We'll move on to the next case on the docket. 2020-140. I'm sorry, 2020-153, 3233 through 3241 O'Donnell Street. Mr. Nate Prettle, and this is a request to use the premises as 13 dwelling units. And I'll ask for any staff and/or planning reports.
So we have a letter of support from the Canton Community Association. It states, a review of these plans indicates they're quite straightforward, and while it does raise concerns with our committee due to more parking being added in the neighborhood, we are not opposing the request. We do continue to ask for help from the city to address parking concerns in the area with the improvement in public transportation transportation options. I will also add that Mr. Prettle emailed me a copy of the parking waiver from the Planning Commission, which I can forward to you all and will become a part of the file.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property a few years back was approved by the board for use as a residential property, conversion from a commercial or non-residential use. The applicant obtained the board's approval for the basement office space in 2018 and is now proposing to use that basement office space as the 13th dwelling unit instead. Planning Department's position essentially is that it is incumbent upon the applicant to show why this property cannot be operated as 12 dwelling units and instead needs the 13th dwelling unit. Separately, the department is concerned about what might need to be done in order to make the third dwelling unit actually comply with fire and safety, building and housing code standards, given the current state of the building in terms of how it's constructed. The department is therefore recommending disapproval of the application unless the applicant demonstrates the necessity of a lot area variance for the proposed additional basement dwelling unit and demonstrates how the proposed basement dwelling unit will be made to comply with safety provisions of the City of Baltimore's codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Mr. Prettle?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nate Prettle here on behalf of the owner of 3233 O'Donnell Street. I think I'll quickly go over some of the approval history of this property as it is relevant to today's appeal. Initially, it came before this board with a proposal to demolish this historic structure and construct, I believe, 4 new 4-story single-family dwellings. There was quite a bit of community opposition to several aspects of that proposal, and so at that time, I think that appeal was withdrawn. After that, we came back to the board for this current 12-unit proposal, which I believe we was supported by the community and approved, and construction went forward. While construction was happening, we also came back to the board for a neighborhood commercial establishment for this office space. And since that approval, the construction was finished and the office space was fit out over that period, and then the pandemic happened. And frankly, there was a lease about to be signed by a national architecture and engineering design firm that had pulled out, and it's become apparent that really that space is never going to be used for any sort of commercial aspect. I think it's important to note that this is an historic structure that has received both CHAP and federal historic tax credits, that it's a fully occupied building that has a tenant demographic that is far more diverse than both Southeast Baltimore as a whole, as well as the Canton neighborhood in itself. And I can provide, if the board is interested, some more specifics about that. I should note that in regards to the parking aspect of this, there was a loading zone located on Bayless Street that was going to be used for the commercial tenant that has since been given back as on-street parking to the neighborhood. I'm not going to say it was entirely, sort of dependent on this appeal being approved. It's not. We've already done that, in the last several months. That space is back there, but I'd like the board to acknowledge the fact that we are adding, because of the getting rid of the commercial space, we are adding another on-street parking spot back to this. Mr. Drude, thank you for mentioning the off-street parking exemption letter, which was obtained per the condition on the original approval. And I think it's important to note that this property and this proposal in itself is really emblematic of the goals of the new zoning code and frankly of the city master plan. We're preserving historic structures, increasing diversity in the neighborhood, and getting away from a reliance on cars. And all of these things are built right into the codes. And this project has utilized all of that. The increase in the board has already found that this property is unique, that it has hardships that specifically relate to the density variance. And this is really a small increase in that degree of variance. And I would put forth that the findings that the board has already made certainly apply to this additional unit as well, particularly in the fact that, in going away from the commercial space, we've added additional on-street parking back onto the street. In regards to the planning department's comments about life safety and code applications, I will say that any occupancy of this is dependent on approvals from the city of Baltimore, both in terms of building plans as well as an occupancy permit and inspections on that. And with my longtime relationship with this developer, who I have a lot of respect for, I think is one of the better adaptive reuse and historic preservation developers that you will find in the city. I can't speak specifically to the measures you'll take, but I have full confidence that, the city would never issue an occupancy permit without it. So I'll just leave it at that this will never be occupied without the full review and approval of the structural engineers and the fire department and building and housing officials. I would believe that the building is probably sprinklered, which gets, but I don't want to put that on record, but that would be my guess. Anytime you have a change of use, and this was a light industrial commercial building to residential, under today's building code, it's a requirement that you add sprinklers. So that would be my guess. And I would urge the board to approve this appeal based on the community support and the other benefits that this building has brought to the city in Southeast Baltimore. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, note that we have a community support letter in the file. And that's basically what I have. And I'm going to open it up to any questions.
We do have two people who would like to testify.
Sure.
First, I'm going to call Bill Koenig. You are now unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Bill. I've lived in Baltimore City since 2006. Currently own a home on the 1100 block of South Clinton Street. I am upset about the absence of off-street parking where the O'Donnell Street apartments, when they were constructed. I never saw an appeal notice that was posted before they broke ground on this building and started construction when it was still a warehouse space. I'm disappointed to hear that they're adding additional residential living space, still without plans for off-street parking. I want to come back to Mr. Prettle's comment about the loading zone in a moment. The parking has gotten considerably more difficult for us since the construction of these apartments on my block. And they are not at capacity. So I also want to challenge his statement about being fully occupied. And maybe I'm not understanding the terminology there, but the website shows that they still have 8 available units. So maybe that just wasn't updated. But I know part of this is because of the pandemic. Everyone's kind of working at home. But even before the pandemic hit, I noticed a drastic impact to my ability to park on my street where I own my home. And I believe that that's a direct result of this commercial property. So 2 points I want to make about that loading zone. So the 2 spots that are in front of that loading dock, they have always been available for parking to residents in the community. There were only very limited times when you could not park there when this was still a warehouse. So I think it's very disingenuous to say that they are somehow providing additional space to residents by the fact that those are there. Those have always been there. Secondly, I'm frustrated about the fact that they never did anything for off-street parking for their residents. They say they're luxury, but they don't have any off-street parking like a lot of the other luxury apartments in the area have. And I would suggest that what they should do with that basement space, since they can't seem to find any commercial tenants, is they should provide off-street parking in the basement. I wish I had a picture I could show you all, but there are 2 large loading docks and they already have a curb cut. They not easily, but they very definitely could have had off-street parking in the basement of this gigantic building with all these units. But they opted to cram more units in the building instead. And that has directly impacted me and my neighbors. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koenig.
And there is one more person who would also like to testify. Jennifer Thompson, you are now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I have much to add beyond that, but I mean, I would say that I agree. Parking has been worse, and I think it's kind of laughable to imply that the people in this building are somehow helping to move towards a focus that's less on cars, because it doesn't mean they don't have cars. It just means they might not be using them as much. I think one point I saw a resident from the apartment back onto my flower bed, mess up my flowers, and then leave their car parked there for the next 3 weeks so that I couldn't repair it. So, they definitely have plenty of vehicles that have been inserted into our area and have made it harder to park. I have a lot of friends in the neighborhood. Everybody's been angered by it as well. I'm sorry. I didn't have time to prepare for this because I didn't realize until recently, because the notices are posted on the O'Donnell side and I'm on Clinton. So I guess that's how the last one got snuck past us. I wasn't even aware that it was being done until, they had already broken ground. So I guess that's all I have.
Is that it for the callers?
Yes, that's it for the callers.
Mr. Prettle, any response you want to make to any of the commentary that we heard?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things. One, these are not luxury units. So the comparison to sort of these other luxury buildings, I think, is not something that applies in this situation. These units come in at least 25% less than any of the new construction units that are built in the area. In regards to the previous parking spot, that was absolutely an active no parking zone and an active loading dock, and there was even a city sign, a no stopping sign, that my client removed to put this back on there. So that was a lawful no parking area, and that's been removed, and so now it's on street parking. And in regards to adding parking spaces into the basement of this, any of the changes that would have been required to do that, I mean, frankly, if it's cost prohibitive, that's not the reason that it was done. We disqualify this from any of the historic tax credits and other factors that go in with the historic aspects of the building. The local chap tax credits, the federal tax credits, and the goals of retaining historic properties in the city. That all would have gone away if they were to alter this building to the degree that would have been required to put basement parking in this, which, and frankly, because the size of the building, wouldn't have gotten that many spots as it is. So those are my responses. And again, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions. I would urge the board to approve this. We do have the letter of support from the Canton Community Association, and from my perspective, this has been really a sort of a landmark, development that takes advantage of the provisions that the City Council enacted in the new zoning code.
Okay. Are there any remaining questions from the board?
No.
I just have one. Mr. Prettle, this is something where you already have 12 units and you're just asking for one more?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I will add that all 12 units are occupied. I'm not sure what the website says, but I just checked with the owner of the building, and they're absolutely, it's fully leased as is.
Okay. Very well. Thank you, Mr. Prettle, for your presentation. And we will take this matter up.
Great. Thank you.
Right. I guess I want to turn my attention back to 2020-111, Greenmount and Brentwood Avenues. I don't know if Ms. Hecker is available to give us an update as to where we are.
I don't believe she is. I think when she said to hold it, she might have meant like postponing it.
Postpone it.
Since we've already done some of the testimony, that would just carry over rather than calling it because you can't call it a full postponement once you've started.
Right. Okay. All right, then that would conclude the docket. If we are going to revisit 2020-111 at another time. Okay, that ends the regular docket. We'll proceed to the deliberation part of the meeting.